We are so thrilled to speak to wonderful entrepreneurs in our Ripples of Success interview series. And for World Entrepreneur Day, we are expanding out to the ripples around the world and speaking to amazing entrepreneurs about what it's like to be CEO, how they're running their businesses, and just cool, great conversations. Enjoy.
Yeah, so welcome, David. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, and that's my favorite way to play.
You bet, me too. I'm like, well, we'll just have a conversation.
Oh yeah, let's just talk.
Exactly. So this is Ripples of Success, and we basically are connecting in with fabulous, awesome people in our world, talking about what's going on with them and talking about leadership and community. And you are a master at both of those. So I'm so glad to have you here.
Yeah, thrilled to play.
David, you recently published your book in the fall, right? That's your second book?
Yes, it's
second book. That's what I thought.
Fall of COVID, as it
yes.
were.
Yeah. Now, so tell me about the book, because I know that it's really relevant to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so it's called Mindset Mondays with DTK, and it's 52 ways to rewire your thinking and transform your life. And conveniently enough,
oh, look, there's one right here.
Right here.
Enough about me. Let's talk about my book.
Let's talk about me. What do you think about me? Right. No, the book, fascinatingly enough, one of my coaches challenged me to write the book that I needed to read. And I think that's, by the way, for anybody listening who's faffing about trying to decide whether they should write a book or not, think about it that way. You know, what is it? Part of the way I looked at this is if I went back to my early entrepreneur self 29, 30 years ago,
Yep.
what did I need to hear then? And what did I need to hear at any of the 5 or 6 different times I've reinvented myself or my company? Hell, what did I need when I was 14? It's all the same thing. And what I did with Mindset Mondays was, so it's based off a 3-year-long series so far of weekly live broadcasts that I do, which are musings and conversations on mindset, leadership, and learning. And no, you can't separate them. They're all a mush and tightly integrated. And the learning that came from the community of folk who've been part of those broadcasts and part of the Facebook group that sprung up. And so each chapter is based on one of those first 52 broadcasts. And
Cool.
It's designed to be a way to not just play with another mindset or play with some new learning about leadership, but through the Rewire framework, which is something we built for the book, it gives you 6 different steps at the end of each chapter. So you can take that learning and take it out into your world and make it real so that the learning doesn't become shelfware like the book's inevitably behind you on the shelf. This is something you get to make real and not forget as soon as you close the book.
It's so true. I would call it shelf help.
Yeah, shelf help. And well, the forget curve is so rapid.
It
and in
is.
fact, now it's sort of like the forget hockey stick.
It's so true. It's so true. We were talking yesterday about, deep learning and how do you actually transfer learning effectively. It's especially in such a full environment of data and information, being able to capture that and own it. You need to have an experience.
Well, and mostly because, and not just an experience, a series of experiences with high frequency over duration of time, because our brains are wired for comfort and consistency. The brief, 3 years of neuroscience in about a minute and a half, each long neuron, the part of it's called the axon, has a little fatty sheath on it that makes the electricity zip along it even faster. Well, every time you have a thought or use the same behavior, get a little more fat on that neuron. And that means that it zips along even faster. So your brain and the electricity wants to go that way. And if you want to have a different thought or choose a different behavior, you've got to do that behavior or hold that thought repeatedly over a duration of time, 3 to 4 weeks, depends on whose research you like best,
Yep.
so that the fatty sheath on this one starts to wither and you get a fatty sheath on the other one. Your brain is wired to do what it's always done. In order to change that, you have to do something and do it over and over again.
Can't just
Small
think about
actions,
it.
right,
Can't
right.
just
You
read about
can't
it.
just manifest it. No, no, no. It's small actions repeated with frequency over a duration of time. It's kind of simple. We make it hard, but it's kind of duh. Just keep doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so true. So tell me about the experiences you've seen with your clients as they've been building their leadership skills and their capacity for leadership.
Okay, so it's fascinating. With leadership, people will come in and say, oh my God, I want to make my team better. So I want to grow my company. I'm like, great, grow your people. Oh, so I want to make those people better. How do I do that? Well, you start by growing yourself. And in order to grow yourself, it's not building skills, it's paying attention to the one relationship that most of us ignore all the time, which is the relationship with ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Instead of having that negative internal dialogue going bananas and then listening to it, which we all do, it's having those conversations outside your head and making decisions about who you want to be as a leader showing up. And so think about it like Michelangelo talked about sculpture, right? When they asked him, oh my God, how do you carve such brilliant figures? He said, I don't. He said, I free them from the stone. I chip away everything that isn't the figure. Well, that's what the game of leadership is all about. It's chipping away everything that isn't true, that isn't you, and leading from who you be, who you are at your core, authentically. And then, oh my God, modeling that for your people and hiring people and building a culture around that same chipping away of the emotional clutter so that your people are bringing to work every day who they be, who they are at their core, and leading from there. And that's how you build leadership, is helping these people come out of that stone.
Yeah. I love
So I
that.
think that's the core of the work. Everything else is the doing stuff, but the doing stuff doesn't last when you change it if you haven't done the being part first.
Yes, it's so true. And one of our the spectrums, the next level leader spectrums, is this idea of personal mastery. And I know we've talked about this over the years. And this idea, this flip point of going from the world is happening to me
Oh,
to I create my world.
right. There's a coach, Rich Litvin, who talks about it as terms, the difference of being living a reported on life, the world is happening to me, to living a created life. And another way to look at it is the distinction between a manager mindset and an entrepreneur mindset. And don't for a minute think that the entrepreneurial way of being doesn't belong inside corporate. It
Oh, for
does.
sure.
But here's the distinction. You'll see where the flip point is in the middle. A manager gets given a goal,
Right.
and their job is to manage the execution of the plans that have the highest likelihood of that goal being achieved.
Yep.
Fair?
Yep.
An entrepreneur decides what she wants to be true and then goes about creating the conditions for that truth to become reality. It's a completely different way of thinking
Yes.
and
Yeah, it's a
being and
different
believing.
thought
Oh,
process. It's
yeah,
a whole different, not just a different mindset, it's a different perspective.
absolutely. And I take it even further. I think it's an identity. And if I want to change my body, I could do every diet, every workout program, buy each piece of equipment, but that's just faffing about with changing the actions to get different results. It hasn't changed the behaviors underlying those actions or the feelings, beliefs, and thoughts underneath all that. It hasn't touched the identity, which is at the very base.
Right.
So, for instance, if one holds I am an athlete, holds the identity of athlete, and then all the other decisions that cascade from there, the thoughts that one has, the beliefs that one holds, the behaviors, the actions, all of those things are colored by the identity of being an athlete. So
Yes.
the results that happen from there, that's a dramatic, lasting, meaningful change. Well, same as holding the identity of that entrepreneurial being.
Yes.
It changes the way you do everything within corporate
Yeah.
or within your company or within your sole proprietor startup. So it really is, it's mindset squared.
I
And it
like
goes
that.
back to the identity.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. And this idea, years ago you said to me, because one of the big challenges I find when people are in that world is happening to me place, and
Oh,
even as they start to come into that real understanding that I create my world, is this idea of comparison. And this, like, really, and years ago you said to me, don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle.
yeah, that was a slap in the forehead for me when because it is, we do that, oh my God, I also work with coaches. And so when a coach looks out and goes, oh my God, look at what Tony Robbins is doing, or look what this coach or that coach are doing. Yeah, they've been doing it for ages.
And they have a massive team, and they have a, right?
And they started off very similar to what you're doing, and then
Absolutely.
look at them now. So that's their middle and your beginning, and they're nothing alike. And yet we do that all the time.
Yeah.
We compare our business to somebody else's. We compare, I got somebody who's starting up a product company goes, look at Nike. I said, why? I mean, if you want to look at Nike when Phil started it, that's
Right.
one thing. If you want to look at Nike now, no, no, that's, yeah. But we do that, and it's natural. We're wired. Um, David, is it Ross? In Australia, talks about the scarf model, and the S in the scarf model is status, and not, I mean, status in terms of pecking order. Like, this is
Right.
primal, and so when you walk into a space, you're like, okay, am I going to eat or get eaten? Am I
Right.
going to kill or get killed? You're constantly checking status.
Yes.
And that leads us to this comparison driven existence. And the only comparison that's worth a damn is comparing you now
Yeah.
to your best in this moment.
Yes.
That's a comparison you can do anytime, every day. That's one that will propel you forwards. Otherwise, dude, comparison is the thief of joy. We got that from Teddy Roosevelt in the late 1800s. And
Yes.
it's as true now as it was then. All it will do is suck the life out of you.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. So tell me what what are you working on? What are you building out? What are you seeing now around community or leadership in your world right now, David? You always have
Wow.
something cool going on.
So a couple things, this is a lovely time to just be totally transparent and admit. I got so excited by the book creation, the book release, the book launch, the book marketing and promotion, and 85 podcast appearances in 4 months.
Woo!
And I talk so often to my clients about not taking your eye off the fundamentals.
Oh,
Guess what I did?
darn it.
I mean, 13 years of working with clients on this very thing, and I
Yes.
did it. So part of what I'm working on is I've scaled the practice down to working with very few folk and working at a very deep level. And so when you take your eye off the fundamentals for a minute, whoa, I had my first revenue gap in 13 years.
Wow.
So what I've done is I've gone back to focusing on working with clients that inspire me
Yeah.
and light me up, and filling my practice again with people that inspire and intimidate me. People
Ooh, I love
doing
that. I
right,
love when they're just a little bit like, ooh, how am I going to help them?
right, where like I've got to stretch
Yeah.
in order to serve them the way I want to serve them.
Yes.
That's amazing. I filling my book now with those folk, that's been brilliant. And I'm doing a lot more work with a group that I call impact billionaires. And these are fascinating human beings. These are folks, this is not like an Elon Musk who said, I've made billions, now I want to do good.
Right.
Now, although that's fine,
Sure.
it's nothing wrong with that. Impact billionaires are folk who don't care about the number of dollars they amass. That's not important to them. They're driven by the number of lives they impact.
Right.
And they're working on ideas and concepts and platforms and products and services that will change the lived experience of hundreds of millions towards billions of people, changing the way, for instance, women are seen as part of included in and relied upon as part of the economic engine at a national level. I've got a client who's working with unleashing the contribution of women country by country throughout Africa and then moving on to the Pacific Rim and changing the lived experience of women, which, yes, 51% of our global population. And think of the cascade effect. What happens for their children? What happens for the families? What happens for the older generations they're supporting?
Yeah.
It's changing the lived experience at a massive level. And this is someone who started off saying, oh, yeah, I want to change leadership for women in corporate America. And then realized, holy crap, no, I want to really do this. So that's a group of people I love working with.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
very cool, David. I always love to chat with you. You always have so much fun things to share. I really admire your energy and the space that you create for your people and for the people in your world. And I really want to thank you for coming and playing with me today.
It's my pleasure. It's fun to play.
Yeah.